Hey, welcome to my channel and our spiral into madness, also known as making comics. So, you want to make a comic? That's nice. But let me save you from future heartbreak and disappointment, because today we're talking about 7 things you should never do in a comic. I have not made most of these mistakes myself, which isn't usually what YouTubers say when they're doing one of these videos, but I'd say that's a good thing in this case because some of these can be comic suicide completely. So, for number 1, don't sell your soul to a publisher. Don't sell your comic to a publisher like Webtoons, or sometimes you can, but I'll get to that. I know it feels validating to be noticed. You're like, oh my god, a real company actually likes my work. But what they actually like is the idea of owning said comic and adding in intense deadlines that I can assure you that you can't handle as a one man army. Also, the pay tends to be close to minimum wage, which isn't really ideal. I don't think anyone wants that, and usually not very accurate to the amount of hours you yourself are putting in. And unless they're going to get you an assistant illustrator, then it's best to turn them down, unfortunately. But a bonus thing about turning them down is that you own your stuff. You worked for it, so just post your comic, grow your audience, and keep your freedom. You can set up your own website like myself, or what I'm doing right now, to host your own comic, so you don't have to pay anyone for that, and everyone goes towards that. And all your other comics, you can link it to all your socials, which I'm going to do when it's up and running. But that's probably the best idea, unless they're going to give you an assistant illustrator, unless you already have one. But that's a whole different story because you need two pays for that. And number 2, don't use a trash DPI. The second mistake is basically a death sentence if you're ever trying to actually put your comic online or print it. So, pro tip, set your DPI to a minimum of 600. Some people say you can set it start at 300, but that is not professional. 600 is a professional level. You can do 900, but that's not the standard and it's kind of unnecessary. You're wasting um, I guess space. The file size will be larger and no one's going to notice that, unfortunately. So just post at a bigger size than you plan to post. Because shrinking looks good. Enlarging, that's always a no-no. That's how you end up with line art that looks like someone drew it with watercolors instead of a fine pen. And number 3, don't draw for vertical scroll if you want to print. I know vertical scroll is super convenient due to how many people read comics off their phone, but let me tell you, trying to Frankenstein a physical book out of a vertical strip webtoon styled comic is impossible. And you'd waste so many hours trying to do so. You'll either have to redraw the entire series or just give up, and both of these are obviously unfortunate options. So decide that before drawing anything on your comic. If you plan to make physical copies, I for one want to make a physical copies of my comic Blackthorn in a traditional style. And I'm also setting up my own website to host my comic on in both vertical scroll and side to side, but the pages will only be set up in traditional page setup for my convenience. The only difference is one you can scroll up and down, and the other you have to actually click to the next page. So if you're gonna ever be making a physical copy, then or planning to, and you should plan to if or if not, then decide right away if you're doing vertical scroll or if you're doing traditional style. Number 4, I don't think I've been counting these yet, but this is number 4. Don't chase trends. This isn't TikTok. You don't need to make your comic about how I got reincarnated as a medieval plow just because that's always trending, or romantic comics tend to do well, especially on webtoons. But if you're not actually into it, it's going to be obvious and it's going to be lazy. It's going to feel uninspiring and unengaging. Write what you want to read. If you like something, then chances are others will like it too. Number 5, don't use every trope you've ever seen. Okay, listen. Tropes aren't evil, but Don't throw every single one of them in just because they're popular. Force proximity? Sure. Enemies to lovers? Okay, maybe. Secret royal bloodline prophecies, chosen one, love triangles, OPMC, demon inside the MC for whatever reason? Like, chill. You have the chance to write something unique. So make something unique, pick like two, sprinkle them here and there. Don't drown your comic in these cheesy tropes. But I'd honestly ask you to avoid the demon side of the MC because that's just been so overused, especially by the most popular animes in the world. Naruto, Bleach. You could wait, Bleach? Yeah, Bleach. You could say One Piece even, plenty of others. It's not hard to find them. But off my top of my head I could probably name a few more than that. But I don't want to take up time. Number 6, you don't need to be a power scaler. There really isn't any reason to make a Jinwoo, Saitama, or any character that's sole purpose or main purpose is to be or become stronger than everyone else. Obviously, you still can do that, just remember to do it right if so. Saitama is a good example of it done right, but also an absolutely horrible reference to use because the way it's done for him is so obvious and even iconic, and people will notice the direct connections between them. They might feel like you're stealing rather than referencing, which you don't want to do that, obviously. In short, your character can still finish their story without becoming the strongest. The more you try to scale up your character's power, the weaker your plot becomes. That's something I strongly believe, and I make sure to keep that in mind whenever I'm writing. And know the power of friendship or determination is part of the problem. If the MC is weaker than their opponent, please find a good way to finish the fight, even if it means the MC loses. Don't just out of nowhere give them a second wind and the bad guy says, "Where's all this power coming from?" And he proceeds to get smacked around, even though the MC had zero training, while the opponent had like 500 years of practice and has lived through countless battles. That's just dumb. So just think it through on how that's going to work. There's plenty of webtoons that do it very well. I really wish I remember this one specific one because it was done so perfectly. The MC's very weak and he stays weak. He gets one annoying weapon but it's still done fairly well. He never really truly beats them. He outthinks them or manipulates someone else into beating them or stops the fight in some way because he is not that strong yet and he knows it. And I like that a lot about it. I'll need to figure out what that was called. Number 7, redraw. Never redraw. Don't redraw. I've only done this on my first comic panel ever, and I'm glad I've only done this once. Because if you spend just 2 hours on every page, unless you say you draw 30 pages, that's 60 hours to do what is equal to a chapter, in my opinion. And now you feel like your skill has improved, and I'm sure it has. So you redraw the first panel because it's the worst of the bunch, obviously. But now your second panel looks bad in comparison. And so on, so you redraw until you've redrawn every page and spent the double the amount of time than if you just had left it. So instead, just leave it as it is, and you can show your growth as you continue your comic or work on something else. Also, when I said I only redrew the first page, I meant when I was working on the first page, finished it, started on the second one, didn't finish it yet, fixed the first one, and then I continued, and I have not looked back since, and I think that's fantastic. I'm quite sure this video is gonna be like 8 minutes long, but that's 7 things you should never do in a comic. I'll also post a video on how I'm setting up my webcomic because I see a lot of people just trying to get theirs to be posted on a platform that isn't that might be a little volatile. So I'll post about that and how you can do it with Squarespace or Wix or any of those sites. Not Canva. Honestly, I have a grudge against Canva. Don't ask me why. All right. Have a good day.